We're finding, not surprisingly, that AI implementations are more about the non-AI part than they are about the building. You spend 80% of the time, I don't know if that's quite right, but you spend a lot of time getting in and understanding what people actually do and where they want to go and how do you get from where they are now with what they currently have to where they want to be. And I think to answer your question about, how the past couple of years have gotten me here, I've been doing things with AI for a decade now. And it kind of went quiet because it came normal software.
On this week's show, how to do AI with Connor Schmeling and Hugh Seaton from Quantum Rise. All right. That's right. It's one host. It's two guests. Because if you're going to figure out how to do AI, it takes more than just me. I hope you guys got that. Was tongue-in-cheek on the way in. This is going to be a fun one. Hugh Seaton, it's good to see you back at the podcast microphone with me. How are you?
Good. Glad to be back.
Where are you officing and whiteboarding from today?
Austin, Texas, where I'm happy to say it's 82 degrees and sunny.
See, I can't say I want it to be sunny or I want it to be warm. It's cold, and man, do we need snow up here in the mountains. We just got a little more, so hopefully see some of you folks out here for skiing later. But Connor, welcome to the show. First timer, how you doing?
Appreciate it, Jeff. Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Where we got you coming in from?
We're at the Quantum Rise headquarters in Chicago, Illinois. So not quite the 80 degrees, but we're good.
Chicago, one of my favorite places for conferences, one of my favorite places in the summer, not in the winter, in the summer.
Yeah.
Actually, there's like this perfect window time that we seem to go there. So, but nonetheless, one of my favorite. And if you're an architecture buff, an awesome place to go for architecture, man. Take the architecture tour, right?
It runs right past my condo on the river, so we see them all the time.
That's awesome. Well, listen, we'll dive in, we'll have a lot of fun. But before we do, y'all know the deal. But I'm going to be honest with you. You're not doing it as much as I would like you to do it. So go to youtube.com/the ConTech Crew. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like buttons. Give me some feedback. Tell me you love it. Tell me you hate it. Just tell me you're there. Are you trying to reach the innovators and decision makers in construction technology? Then look no further than sponsoring the ConTech Crew. That's right, we're taking new advertisers. Email us at advertising@thecontechcrew.com to learn more. All right, we're back. Hugh, I'm going to let you kick this off because it was a brainchild between you and I that made us want to come on and, sort of talk about what's going on right now. So talk a little bit about, where you've been and where you are right now.
Yeah, so I've been talking about AI for a while. I've been working with the guys at Quantum Rise for, 9 months now and have joined more formally. This is an amazing time for AI. Of course, I'm going to say that, but, I like to make the analogy of the internet where everyone thought the internet was amazing and had a lot of potential in like 1998, 1999, but it was nowhere near where it got to be in 2007. And we're kind of there. We're kind of like in the 1999 era where there's a lot of promise, a lot of interesting things. The fact that 1 billion people are using chatbots is obviously a good sign, but we're still really early. And there's a lot of figuring out going on right now. We jokingly said how to do AI because we get that. We get people saying, look, we know we need to do AI. Can you help us out? And a lot of what we wind up doing is taking that big question and turning it into something useful. And there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of people that feel some anxiety that we're going to fall behind, which is justified to some degree. But I'll often say, this is so early that you're doing the right thing by getting into it now, by trying it out yourself, by using it on projects, by using it, doing internal implementations, which we'll get to a little later. Now's the right time. No one's really behind yet, unless you're a big foundation model, in which case, that's a whole other thing. This is a good time to be thinking about processes, to be thinking about how it might fit in. And that's a lot of what I spend my time doing.
I think that's really important because the distinction there is if you're building AI models, et cetera, you're behind, sure. But that's a select group of people. And in fact, it's getting even more select and shrinking down. What you're saying is if you are thinking about operationalizing AI and really bringing it into your organization, you're not nearly as far behind as the pundits would like you to think, which,
That's
you
right.
know, is part marketing hype. Like at some point, people are going to pay for these things in the end. So there's going to be some marketing hype. And that's why, you know, I think what's interesting here is that you brought Connor with you. So Connor, talk a little bit about the yin to the yang with Hugh and what you're up to at Quantum Rise and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with a ton of construction clients everywhere from general contractors, asphalt and paving, subcontractors, et cetera. And as you said, these clients come to us and say, we want to do AI, but there's clients all over the place on where they are in their AI journey. You've got people that have started to experiment with POCs or get kind of stuck in POC mode. They don't know where to start or can't even spell AI. So it's a lot of education, just instilling the fundamentals in these organizations. So these teams from the back office, project management, core operations, just understand the basics of how to use some of these tools, whether it's Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, or other AI tools, and then really helping them understand their processes deeply, their data, their systems, and how we can actually make this a reality for them. Because a lot of the clients will think that AI is just a magic wand; it's going to solve all their problems, but it's only going to work if it's purpose fit for the organization and really the adoption and making sure that it's minimal disruption as possible in the workflows, because otherwise you're going to have a change management nightmare down the road. So keeping those users in the loop. So
you're using some of those. Now I know why you brought you. You're using some of those sexy words like proof of concept, change management. Not really. That's not what the hype folks like to hear, that it's hard to do and it takes time and maybe even some POC. How did you get here though, Connor? Because, you know, everybody listening in likes to know a little more about our folks. So what's your history like? Because you're running the sort of the vertical of construction over there, but how'd you get here?
Yeah, so I've spent most of my career in the consulting, technology, digital transformation world. Started my career at KPMG and doing Office of the CFO work, everything from large scale ERP implementation, some RPA work, operating model design to help back in the day, the labor arbitrage, moving companies' operations to shared services centers. From there, worked for a fintech startup and brought me to Quantum Rise. I'm just a problem solver. So I like getting deep, really understanding the client's problems and processes, gaining their trust early. So, because if you're just coming at them with outside ideas with no understanding of the business, they're never going to want to work with you. So really becoming kind of one with the client to integrate yourself within their operations and understand what's going on so we can make the right recommendations, but then move those recommendations into real outcomes down the road and help them implement or build these solutions that are solving the right problems for them.
Yeah, I mean, you said this pre-call, Hugh. Now I get it. You know, Connor's got to cash the checks that you write over there on what you guys can do and how it can help companies. Because I think, you know, in your journey, Hugh, that's what you've spent the last couple of years, especially just, I'd say, you know, learning and educating. Like it's a strange moment, right? Where you're learning and educating at the same time and identifying the problems. So talk a little bit about, you know, last couple of years of this process and sort of what drove you here. Where are you on the current problem set?
That's a great point. And, you know, one of the things that Connor brought up that I'll kind of tease out is we're finding, not surprisingly, that AI implementations are more about the non-AI part than they are about the building. You know, you spend 80% of the time, I don't know if that's quite right, but you spend a lot of time getting in and understanding what people actually do and where they want to go and how do you get from where they are now with what they currently have to where they want to be. And I think to answer your question about, you know, how the past couple of years have gotten me here, you know, I've been doing things with AI for a decade now, and it kind of went quiet because it became normal software. And that's interesting because I think it'll happen again. Somebody smart said we call it AI when it doesn't work. I think that's a bit of an overclaim, but the point is it's all, you know, the educating while learning is because it's changing so fast. And if anything, the last quarter has been remarkable in how busy it's been in terms of new things and new changes. Even the last 2 weeks, what Claude Code has shown itself to be able to do, it's been around a little longer than that, but you're starting to hear some pretty interesting comments about how this is just different from what was there before. And this isn't the last time you're going to hear that. So there isn't a body of knowledge that you study up on and then off you go and teach people. You have to be really paying attention to what's going on now and asking yourself what it means and building things yourself and trying to do things and so on and so forth. So, you know, we're at a place now where it's good enough that you can do real things, you can do reliable things, but to do that, you need to understand the problem really well. And again, that's where someone like Connor comes in to spend a lot of time listening and a lot of humility to say, we don't have a hammer and we're going to go find the nails. It's what are you doing? And let's spend a lot of time on that. It's the difference between where, you see some folks out there who maybe have a team overseas and they'll build some stuff for you and that's wonderful, but maybe they build a thing you don't need, or maybe they build a thing that doesn't quite work, or they build a thing that no one's ever going to use. Getting all that right to make sure it's a priority, make sure it fits with what you're doing now. That's the key thing for AI now. We're past the part where it's, cool custom GPTs. That may be a solution, but the point is we're past cute little magic tricks, and now it's industrializing. So at CES this year, we really saw that it's industrializing in a way that it just hadn't been before. It was actually kind of NVIDIA's show where they talked a lot about this being another kind of stage where we spent last year realizing we needed to do a lot more tooling to make things work. That's not in the rear view, but it's pretty established how to do some of that stuff. So now we have to make it so that it's a lot cheaper to use. It's a lot more reliable in kind of every part of the stack. And this year, there's going to be more of that. There's going to be more real things being done because we've passed some of the early uncanny valley points, and now we're ready to actually do stuff.
Yeah, and I kind of want to double down on that because I've been saying that for a while, and I've said it with a few other things. But the easy analogy is like, we don't talk about our cars as diesel engine. You don't talk about it as a gas engine. You just call it a car, right? It's a thing. You don't think about the thing that runs it. You put gas in it, but it's not a gas powered, it's not the way you talk about it. That's when AI gets to that point where you're just using X, Y, or Z, then we've reached that moment, and that's an important moment. But I really want to double down and talk to Connor about this part, because the biggest failures that I've seen and the biggest problem through this arc that I've seen is organizations feeling that pull that you said, like they're behind and we want to do AI, and they gather a very expensive team together and they solve for a problem that just doesn't have the return. You're like, why did you solve that? Well, because we could. Okay, I could solve a lot of problems, but should I? So Connor, I want to hear from you, because by the way, to the listeners out there, this is not just in construction. Like, I've heard it in construction quite a few times, but I have a purview outside and I've seen it in other large organizations. I've had people pull me aside and say, wow, my company's doing this and we're trying to automate an AP process that takes me 5 minutes. And really, there's all this other stuff. Like, I didn't need it. And it doesn't work all the time. So talk to me about, from a construction perspective, what are some of the big misses? And then how are you resetting people to go down this process with you?
As you hit on, there's so many companies out there that think they're behind. Some might be, some might not be, because there's so many organizations that are in the same spot of just starting to toy around with some of these. But again, to your point, they don't know where to start, or they just latch onto a problem and go try and solve it. And it failed. They didn't realize the value. The users didn't like it. And then people get pissed off. The organization's a little averse to change. So where we typically start with this is we do what we call rapid AI breakthrough assessment. And as Hugh kind of said, it's not just an AI strategy. It turns into a business strategy. We sometimes don't even talk about AI solutions until week 2 of these projects that we do with these clients. So we start casting a pretty wide net, understanding, okay, from a business perspective, what are your top 10, top 20 problems that you're trying to solve, or metrics or KPIs that are lagging? That could be an AP process. It could be an estimating issue. It could be a scheduling issue. It could just be you got a bunch of churn across the organization. We don't know why our employees are churning. So it's not just construction field operations, it's just core back office operations too. So once we typically gather leaders across the organization, so we can speak the common language, and it's not just a mandate from the CEO or the board of directors. So then everybody feels like they're part of this process and kind of co-shaping and co-building this strategy of where we want to attack. And then once we understand those important KPIs or business outcomes that our clients are trying to improve, that's when we whittle it down and start to go deep with the client stakeholders, the subject matter experts, the people who are actually doing the work. So getting deep into understanding the processes, the systems, where things fail, where there's a kind of a gut decision, or maybe we can't trust the data, and then work backwards from there to figure out what that best fit solution is for them.
And then we build it.
And then you build it, right? Yeah.
And then we build it.
But that's the magic sauce. But what I like there is you hit 2 huge things. The gut. I've said this from the beginning, and you really, I'm like, I want to take us back into like a time machine, because you said it, Hugh, like pre-internet and then the internet. I like to use the SaaS kind of rise of SaaS because I was so ingrained in that, and I went through it where it was the same thing. It's like, there's fundamentals, understand the problems, understand the systems, understand what's happening. Like, really look for what are we looking for as an organization, and then dig on where are the problems. And then none of that is fun. And really, none of that has changed, right, at all in the process of understanding. The tools you're looking at, the things you're dealing with, they're much more advanced now. The way we build is more, sure, all that's changed, but the fundamentals are still true in understanding and finding those problems, and then finding those things that would make sense in going slow to then figure it out. Now, what we're going to be capable of doing in the future with this new technology, well, I would say that's very powerfully different and game-changing. Don't disagree. Just believe fundamentals don't go away. I love that, because, one of the places I said in the beginning for analytics was, you want to know where you need analytics? You want to know where you need data? That is when you're sitting in a room and someone says, I feel like my history here is no. I feel, my gut, they're bad influencers. They're really bad, because we're real positive people or we're real negative people, but we go on the spectrum. So I love that you hit the gut. I love that you hit I'm sure it's where manual entry and stuff is happening, right?
Yeah.
Like, those are the opportunities. So, and I know I cut you off there, Hugh, but I wanted to make sure people understood that, like, the fundamentals are still true. It's just the tool sets that we now have available. I mean, you used to use a hammer when you're I'm watching somebody put in a roof across from me, so I'm going to use this. You used to use a hammer, hammer all of that in, the nails. That guy's got an impact drill up there, or drill nail gun, and he's poop, 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 poop. I'm watching him. What he's doing didn't change. The tool that he's using did, and he's way faster. I can see it. So talk a little bit about that, Hugh, because I think that's important to understand. Like, the fundamentals are true. What Connor and his team are doing with the clients is true. What are you seeing as transformational, and what are you seeing like the future be able to look like?
Going back to NVIDIA again, I'm going to quote Jensen Huang. He's been talking, I really like this framework, the difference between a purpose and a task. And I think what you're starting to see is people realize exactly what you just said, that AI is a tool that will help you to achieve your purpose, often by automating little tasks that are in there. So I think you're starting to see people go past the hype phase. There's going to be plenty of hype. At LinkedIn, apparently, that's all it does now. And if anything, people should just recognize that what you're seeing on especially LinkedIn, but really in a lot of places, it's just people trying to make hot takes. It's not real, there's real work being done.
So except the ConTech Crew's, LinkedIn and my LinkedIn.
Obviously everything I put up there, is completely legit. But honestly, they're just it's starting to shift the way it should, which is we're starting to get serious about this and really think about, we're not replacing the entire what a person does and what their purpose is. We're saying you could get to what you're really there for a lot faster, because you're not messing around, you're not second guessing data the same way, you're not hunting for things, you're not unsure about something because you can look it up so quickly. But we are still early. It's worth keeping in mind that we are still early. There's a lot of innovation that will be ahead of us. And one of the things that we spend a lot of time trying to both reassure people, but also in how we engineer things, is to say we're also aware that whatever we put in now, there's going to be things that slot in later that might make it work even better, whether it's a different model. Usually it'll be a different model, but knowing that, you're able to architect things in a way that they're as future-proof as they can be. Certainly not, you're not going to wake up in 9 months and be like, oh my gosh, what did I just spend money on? There's a limit to how much you can promise that. But I think that you can, we have enough history with AI now to have a pretty good sense of how good it'll be in a year. If anything, some of the pieces that make it good now will make it better later. As opposed to, again, you waking up and saying, oh my God, we got to swap it out and we got to change the model. You're not installing software. You know what I mean? You're building a solution that has pieces to it that are as modular as they can be, which is pretty modular.
Yeah, that's one of the critical components as to why, I think specialty groups like yours that are designing and implementing and working with them and aren't selling one individual thing, you're selling a set of solutions to a set of problems that are customized. You said this, and I want to really, really focus on it. Like you said, automating little tasks. So much of that hype that you hear on LinkedIn, or I mean, LinkedIn's, I'd say it's a little better than say like a Facebook or an Instagram or an X, where they're like, you'll wake up tomorrow, we need universal income because the bots will do everything.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Not so much.
No. And it's actually, I mean, maybe, sure, I'll sit with some of the great people and they could probably convince me that in 50 years, that's where we might be. But currently today, in fact, those big things, it doesn't do them and it doesn't do them well, and you can't trust it. And you nailed it. I love, I think it was QuickBase who did a study last year or the year before, and it was 75% or more of people in the field don't trust the data that they're looking at. That's a huge problem. That creates uncertainty. Construction hates uncertainty, right? Just solving for little things together stacked makes for future. So I want to bring it to Connor. Like maybe you have some examples of those little things that like free somebody up to A, have trust, and B, make decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I saw similar to your comment around the little tasks of AI is great at the boring tasks. So sometimes it might, our clients will try and latch on to the fancy problems, but if you really decompose the problem, it's like, what's actually the root cause of it? So one example Hugh and I were actually talking about the other day is like subcontractor buyout, subcontractor pre-qualification process. It's kind of a check the box, but manual effort for legal and finance teams today to just make sure, yeah, our subcontractor is financially liquid, they're meeting our safety requirements, etc. But if you're leveraging the data, it could be more of a strategic advantage for you on your projects, your risk, etc. If you're pulling in Hugh's drywall company hadn't hit us with any change orders. They're always hitting their schedule and they're always on time and on budget. Let's use that for more of a subcontractor performance reporting so we can use it as a strategic advantage of what subcontractor is going to be the best trade and partner for us on this job. So being able to leverage that data, I know you mentioned you might not be able to trust 75% of the data, but there's a lot of data there that is under leveraged today to help the business make better decisions at the time of estimating, at the time of buyout. So moving it more from just a check the box activity to more of a competitive advantage for you as you're going to bid and preparing your project plans and schedules.
Their fear of the data, or they're unsure of the data, is that they're not seeing it all, right?
Correct.
That they're not getting it all. They're only capturing like a little bit of it. So they don't trust it. They want to know that it's the entirety. So they want to know that like that drywall contractor didn't actually, just like we didn't notice the 2 times they defaulted or they were late or whatever. And so that's the point, is that you're giving them the understanding that we have it in its entirety, and now we're making it available to you in its entirety to make a really well-informed decision and drive your business. And that's ultimately what we want, right? This is I love that it's great at boring tasks, because we don't have enough people, we don't have enough time, and we certainly don't have enough experience to go around to make those informed decisions. And that's what, things like this do. And I mean, there's so many things in what construction companies do that are menial little tasks that are necessary. Like that, I think people hear that and they think, oh, it's unnecessary. You can't skip it. It's necessary, but it doesn't mean it's fun.
It's so funny on that too, because I'll talk to so many like superintendents, project managers, guys that are in the field to start off our projects, and they'll be so resistant to start. They'll say, "Hey, I can't help you with my job." And then I ask them a question, goes, "What's corporate bugging you about? Or what annoys you about the information that corporate's bugging you for?" And the floodgates open up and they start listing off 10, 20 different ideas of things that can potentially make their lives easier, because they want to be in the field building. They don't want to have to do all the paperwork, the status updates, the financial reports and budgets and stuff like that. So it's eye-opening for some of them sometimes.
And Jeff, that speaks to where we look at the role of AI, is to elevate the human judgment, intelligence, not replace it. Is you're saying we want to pull away the stuff that stops you from doing what you're really there for. It's necessary for the project and for the company to run, but it isn't building, it isn't adding value. So how do we pull that away so you have more time to think about what you're doing, talk to your teammates, talk to your subs, whoever it might be, but really elevating the human, not replacing them?
I mean, that it's really funny. There's been a lot of attempts at this over time to make us more human. And it's really interesting because, there's so many people that AI makes us less human. I think done correctly, it makes us more human. What is construction based off of? Relationships. Always has been, always will be. It's a face-to-face, it's a hand-to-hand, putting work in, getting things built. And I used to say this, like, it's so crazy because this is 10 years ago where I was like, you're pushing too much to the field and you're inundating them, and they're dabbling in all of your things. But, somebody in finance and a CFO and others in operations were like, we need that. And I'm like, you're not wrong, but gosh, is there an easier way to do it? We've tried so many things along the way that now I think we're in a position where we have an opportunity to deploy a set of tools that can achieve that. And then ultimately, hopefully help the relationship building, help the decision making. Problems, it's not going to get rid of a problem, right? If your AI stack tells you that your switchgear is late, it can't fix that. The key is it tells you that. You have to decide as a team how you're going to adapt to that and handle that. And the earlier the signals happen, the sooner you can do that. And man, that's where this stuff is truly transformative. And I'm going to dig back to one thing about the future proofing, Hugh, because I want, there's a lot of this, like, am I going to go buy OpenAI and I'm going to do all that, or I'm going to build it all? There's always been that build versus buy, right? Talk about the difference here, because you talked about switching out models, and I think that may have glossed over for a few people what that even means. So talk about how you guys are approaching this problem of the rapid change that's going to happen. It's happening today. It's happening tomorrow. How are you stacking this to solve that, sort of, you're not fully future-proof. Nobody, you didn't say that. You just said future-proof-ish,
Well, as much as you can. There's a few things in there that are worth talking about. One of them is basically every month, whether it's Google or it's OpenAI or it's someone else, there's a new model that's coming out. And model, by that, I mean, it's kind of like the engine of AI. It isn't what you're using. It's the thing under what you're using. Back to your car analogy, it literally is like the engine of the car, but you don't drive the engine, you drive the car. So what we're doing a lot of is building all of the things that make it functional and useful. And then you can swap the engine out easier than you can swap a real engine out. And it'll still work. And it's still interconnected the way, the old one was, but it'll be a little faster, a little smarter, a little bit more capable, or often what you're really going to see. Because the models now are good enough that most of what you need them to do, they're probably good enough already. They're going to start to get a lot cheaper. So the running costs, the gas is going to be cheaper and cheaper, and I think dramatically so over the next couple of years. The other thing, though, is because our team has been doing this in some cases for 20 plus years, I'm much more on the technical side. Everything isn't an LLM, and every solution doesn't mean you need a chatbot for it. There's vision models, there's this kind of model, there's analytics models, and so on. And asking yourself, do I need to use the big OpenAI one? And honestly, people often don't want to use one that's public for a number of reasons. And not so much public, but you're pinging an API. Maybe you want to have one that's hosted, it's just for you, privately hosted or whatever. Or maybe you needed to tune something so that it works with the data you've been given. There's a bunch of different ways to look at this. The LLMs have really given everybody a lot of focus and a lot of energy, which is great. But honestly, we've had pretty good models for certain things for a long time. So depending on what you need, it may or may not be a model that's ever going to change because it's already as good as you need it to be. And why mess with it later? It works. Let's just move on. Just keep in mind that there's a lot of different engines, just like there are with engines. There's electrical ones, there's gas ones, there's two-stroke, there's diesel, so on and so forth. And they all have different flavors. And you're starting to see, even for the big frontier models people hear about, they're getting their own personalities as well. So Claude has a kind of a tone of its own. ChatGPT has a tone of its own, and some areas where it's better and worse. Claude has been making a lot of progress in the coding area now, so is OpenAI. But the point is, depending on what you're trying to do, they're not interchangeable as much as maybe they were a year ago. So a lot of that goes into what Connor and the technical team will do is, what do you really need here? And the other thing I want to touch back on the role of humans is, and this idea of data that you don't trust, if it's opaque, you're not giving them any more trust, even if there's AI in there. So a lot of what we also do, and that's this humility of talking to people, is how are we building in verification so you can look at the source documents really quickly. And maybe they're highlighted or whatever it might be. But but understanding that a human is using this is what makes a really good engine into a really good car. You know what I mean? Like how many times have you seen when people trick out a not so great car with an amazing engine? It's like, oh, okay, I don't want to drive that thing, but golly, it's fast. That's a rough analogy for what you might do here is if you're not giving people the comfort to use the thing, doesn't matter how good the tech is. And we've seen that in SaaS too, where people over automate and you feel like I don't have a handle on my risk. So you're automating too much. And I don't want to decide at the end or approve at the end. I wasn't part of the work along the way. I don't have context to make that decision. I can't approve this because I don't really know what you are looking at and I don't really know what's being worked on. So all of that kind of comes together in one big thing where you're saying, how am I creating something that gives the user comfort that there's no new risk, and then senior management comfort that they didn't just make an investment that they're going to have to, replace in 12 months.
Yeah. I mean, you hit on a couple of things that I want to pull over to Connor, and I'm going to use my own analogy in here because you talked about the tricked out car that doesn't look good but goes fast. I just had this experience where I was traveling and I rented a car. We got upgraded. I did not just rent this car straight out, but it was a Range Rover Sport, and it was too much. There was a number of features that I could not I mean, it was like, I got to get where I'm going. Like, what the heck? Like, I know it's got to have a heated wheel. It's got to have this. I got my kid in the back trying to figure it out. And I will tell you, like, my experience was not great because it was just like, yeah, I mean, I'm in a captain's chair and it's comfy and this thing's a giant, but what is it doing? How do I make it? And I got this giant screen. I got to look at the road. Like, so I'm with you. You can go both ways, right? You can underdo it and you can overdo it. So Connor, how do you make sure that it's that creamy middle just right? Because people have to use it.
That's exactly the importance of us trying to understand the processes, what the outcomes they're trying to do, because it's a classic. I might need a Toyota. I don't need a Ferrari, or in your case, a Range Rover Sport. I just need a reliable, basic car to get me from point A to point B. So once we really understand the processes, it's, okay, this might be, AI isn't just an LLM or the latest and greatest reasoning model from OpenAI or Claude or Gemini. It can be a simple automation of just moving data around or transforming data or trying to use all the rich history that you have to predict the potential outcomes. So it could be schedule risk, it could be labor run rates, or if you want to use the engine example, we built a predictive maintenance or predictive diagnostics model for heavy equipment for paving companies. So helping use that rich work order history, fault codes, engine failures, resolutions, et cetera, to help when maybe an engine is about to fail or when something does fail, what parts do I need to go fix that? Because we want that machine back up and running. Otherwise, it's going to really impact our project timeline. We're going to eat a lot more costs, maybe more rental cost or something else that we need to do because we need to get that very important piece of equipment up and running. So it's really trying to decompose what that problem is. And then we'll come back and say, okay, it might be a mix of an automation, an LLM, and maybe a predictive model, or it could just be a basic automation to move data from one place to the other, help you make decisions.
Yeah, and to say with the car analogy, now you put them in the driver's seat. How do you make sure they drive the car and they don't just get out and go do it the old way, walk to where they're going?
Yeah. I mean, we're working with these guys week over week every time we make a new update to the solution we're building, or making sure that what the user experience is and user journey is something that they would actually use. So it's not just you give us a problem, we go away for a few weeks and come back with a solution and say use it. We're getting feedback from them along the way. Call it an iterative or agile process to make sure that this is up to their standards. It's meeting the expectations and outcomes that they expect this thing to do. And then once we give them the keys, they're ready to drive it. They don't have to go figure out the fancy touchscreen on the Range Rover Sport and actually what capabilities there are.
But also, there's a change management piece to this that's also part of a lot of engagements. We have actually an instructional designer. I mean, we went that far to say, how are we creating materials so people can onboard and get going quickly? It's not just the test group that you want to get moving. You want the whole organization. So, not only are you starting with a pretty rigorous analysis of what people have said or they need, what the tech team has said, here's our current stack, here's the software that we already use that we want you to connect with. Also, though, the financial side of what's the ROI. But then you're saying, after we've gone through all that, we have a lot of material to go to the rest of the company and say, Fred really liked it. You know what I mean? And we talked to 20 of your people. Here's how to use it. Here's what to expect and so on. So it isn't just here are the keys. It's also Here's the map. How's that beating up a metaphor? But the point is, you can't just leave people with that. It's that everybody has had that problem with SaaS, where you dump it on people and they get frustrated. Happily, what we create tends to be the point of it. A lot of times is it's already a lot easier because it's automating little pieces and so on. But also just making sure that people aren't left to figure it out.
Number one reason for churn in SaaS is lack of adoption. It's
Yeah.
100%. They never get past the point of using it. You never get past pilot. You never get full saturation. It just doesn't work. And that's why it's critical to have, a group like yours that you're not tied to any one particular thing. And when we were talking really specifically about AI agents and LLMs and computer vision and other things, but ultimately you're working inside of a stack too. So you're working with their PMIS systems, you're working with their financials, you're working with what other, maybe other tool sets that they have, and you're sticking in the middle there, right?
Yeah.
And connecting dots. I mean, a lot of what we'll do, a great example is one of the projects was cost to complete. Like, where are we? We're in the middle of the project. I don't know how many, are there change orders outstanding? Are there this or that? And everybody's, nervous about where are there surprises lingering. And some of that information or all that information is somewhere. It's just not usually in the same place and not usually in a way that you can do something with it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one narrow example of a bigger point.
And I'll steal from that too, is that like there's a lot of computer vision out there that we know is a lot further along than some of the other stuff, but it doesn't actually work really well with the data right now to say, okay, what is the computer vision saying we are, where we are, and how does that relate to the financials and the billing and other things, so I can really get to a true, like, I feel pretty good about a cost to complete or a percent complete, other than, we build 50, so we're 50, that's what you're combining systems together, Connor. And that's part of, you're not just working with the people, you're working with the tech stack too.
Like that computer vision example is perfect. There's great computer vision capabilities out there, but I think a lot of the clients that we talk to, it's like, oh yeah, cool. We're doing some drone photos. We're doing some walkthrough videos with the helmet cams and stuff, but we're not actually using the information from those videos and actually the computer vision that's processing it to feed it back to the people that need to update the project plan, update the schedule, update the budget, go get a change order because we thought this was going to be 50% done by month 3 of the project. And, we're only 25% done based on what the computer vision and walkthroughs are telling us. So that's the important key, I think, moving forward, is how do we actually leverage all these great tools that are being used in the field, but they're kind of just sitting in silos. And that's a lot of valuable information that can be fed back to the teams.
Well, I think that's critical too, because we've seen this in litigation too, because some things that I've heard recently are like, I don't think I want to do that walk anymore because, by the way, when something goes wrong down the road and I go back and I go, oh crap, I had it and I didn't know it, then I'm liable for it. And that is not a reason to not do it. That is a reason to connect it so it can signal sooner. That's the thing, that the computer vision hooked to the other things connected together can create signals that tells that, PM superpowers. Hey, floor 3, West Wing, way off. Early signal. We're going to be in trouble. What do? You get out there and you look at why. Why might be a number of different reasons. Oh, my lift's been down for a few days, or I don't have the material, or the framer, the drywaller, the crew's behind, whatever it might be. But we need to know it. And we need the early signal to it, because that's what we truly want. I don't want people to chuck things away, but I've heard it now. So, these are real solid problems,
And even from a safety perspective too, using some of those drone surveys to identify where there's maybe material that's dangerously stacked in a high traffic area or something like that, to avoid those problems before it becomes an issue. Like, it's those early signals of let's figure it out day of, rather than when the incident actually happened.
Well, I mean, how about trenching? Like, how many trench collapses do we see? How awesome would it be if that drone was picking that up and just, it's an easy measurement, right? It's height, it's length, those two things, the walls collapse, like, sound the alarm, and people think, I just read another report of, a unfortunate accident with another group in a trenching incident. Like, these things happen, and we have these tools that can protect people, but they got to be all working together and connected. And,
And coming back to the point we made earlier about automating the boring stuff, you have time to process those signals when you're not burning up time on paperwork. Like you have time to think about your project. People are worried about it already. It's not like they're not doing their jobs, but if you're overwhelmed with all this stuff, you blow a couple of days on paperwork or whatever it might be, things stack up. So having the time and space for people to do what they're really there for, which is to manage things and execute things, as opposed to doing the back end support, that's essential, but man, it can take a lot of time.
Yeah, and if it's taking time away to do that, you're not keeping your eyes on the job, and your eyes on the job are what we need. We'd love those computer vision signals to show it too, but then, we don't just want to slap those people. I want seasoned foremen to go out and sit down with the team that's digging that trench and say, listen, like when you started, you were here. We're bringing in new workforce, right? We don't have a ton of experience and we need to train them. So this is an opportunity to not worry about your daily report, not worry about this other thing right now, this other bit of paperwork, and to sit down with some new team members and say, listen, when you started and you were, 10 feet, you're okay. But you've now continued down, you're 20 feet long and you're building with the same walls. And those walls of the first 10 are putting just as much pressure. You're not giving yourself enough space. Those are things that seasoned, and by the way, I would not know that if that wasn't a real incident where I actually got talked to by somebody explaining this to me, that this is how this works. So this is valuable, learned over time experience that can then be codified and told to people and explained, and we can just we can take less time doing paperwork, more time trading the future, more time focused on the job, more time getting work in. And that's the power of this. So I just love to see practicality. That's why I said, how do you do AI? But really, we've talked about it as a tool. We've really gone to the fundamentals of business and problem solving and connecting what is, I do think there's an opportunity here done correctly that you guys are on the forefront of starting to connect our ecosystem in a way that it can effectively change. And that's pretty powerful.
That is the plan. One company at a time, but really starting to connect what the potential is and what is that? How does it make you rethink what you're doing? At first, we automate the boring stuff, but then you realize we don't need to do it quite like that in terms of what we do when or what order that we do things in. I mean, that's a little further out. I think there's a lot to do right now, but the ultimate goal in all of this is, if you had more time or you didn't need to throw bodies at that problem, what might you do differently? How might you control risk? How might you win bids on time, not just money?
Yeah, I mean, those are powerful things because, we talked about this in the SaaS times, and I think it's more true now than ever. We used to think about automation or changing and going from A to B to C to D to E, and we would make the software do those things. And now we can make AI do some of those things and connect where it wasn't connecting, because I was manually having to go from E and pick up A, B, C, D and put it into F, right? Well, okay, so now we're solving some of that. But what if we have the time to think about, well, do we really need B, C, D, E? Maybe we can get from A to F systematically, as long as these are not decisions, these are automations, these are things that would naturally come together. Okay, let's skip to F. As long as we're not removing human decision making and creating assumptions in there, right? And we're just automating a process. Like you said, we can rethink work completely.
How many documents in construction were kind of worked out in the 1970s when you were couriering things around, right? A lot. So okay, does it still need to be like that? Maybe for legal reasons, you need to have that version somewhere, but does someone need to be looking at a PDF specification? Not sure they do, and there's 100, I happen to know specs better than other things, but there's 100 little things like that where does it really need to be the equivalent of paper? Surely we can do it some other way. And so I think there's a lot of scope for that. It's important to do these things without creating new risks and not overstepping areas that are there for a reason. But that question, I think, will be something there's no answer to right now. It's a process that we're all in the middle of, or in some cases, the beginning of.
Yeah, and I think that's I could go on forever with you guys about this, but I think that's your moment of saying, like, here's where we are today. Here's what we can do. Here's what we're looking down the path of, and we want to partner with you and get down there. And I think that's what's different about Quantum Rise is you're not selling me one thing. You're selling me a partnership and a relationship, and you're going to go down this with me. And, I get to leverage your expertise as an organization to know that you're going to guide me not just down the right path, but towards the path of my problem. because you've got general contractors, you've got asphalt pavers, you've got, drywallers and framers, you've got a little bit of everybody, and they all need different things. So that's also what, there's this, oh, I need to do it in-house. Listen, we subcontract for a living in this business, right? At GCs, you don't build much. You self-perform one or two things, but you outsource a lot of it. So again, find those trusted partners like Quantum Rise. And on that note, like, Connor, where can they go, learn a little bit more about you, connect with you, and then I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, feel free to find me on LinkedIn, Connor Schmeling, or a link will be shared with this. And then at quantumrise.com, we're problem solvers looking to make contractors, subcontractors, asphalt and pavers win their business and transform with AI.
I love it. Hugh, always great to sit down with you. Let people know where they can go learn a little bit more about you and about Quantum Rise as well.
Yeah, LinkedIn, again, is probably the best place. Quantum Rise is at quantumrise.com. We've got a lot there. We'll have a lot more about what we're doing. Yeah, excited for it.
I was excited to sit down when I heard what you guys were up to. I think this is the type of organization, the type of thing we need in the industry. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on the show and rapping. That was one of the most sound AI episodes we've done, guys. So to both of you, I appreciate that a lot.
Thanks for having us on.
Appreciate it, Jeff.
Thank you for tuning in today to geek out for our interview with Connor Schmeling and Hugh Seaton. To read all our news stories, learn more about our guests, and to listen to this show, visit thecontechcrew.com. This is the ConTech Crew signing out. Until next time, enjoy the ride and geek out.